Hey everybody, it's Ron at Becoming Enlightened Together. So we're going to be doing 2 reads today to make up for the lack of doing one yesterday and to close out this week. Tomorrow starts a whole new week of energetic readings and so on. So let's go ahead and just get right up in there and start the reading. Now this first one I'm doing is basically about someone who's very dependent. Okay. They're in a relationship that's abusive, that is, let's just say there's a lot of domestic issues, family issues as well, people getting involved in this whole situation. There's a lot of things that are coming to the surface, things that both parties have been desperately trying to keep under wraps, trying to put on a false, veneer, facade, for all of the people around them, because both parties, and the one in particular is the one that's trying to break free or pretending to want to break free. I don't know if they're truly, in that mindset or not. It seems to me what I'm seeing is a lot of excuses and very little action to try to get themselves out of something that they very, very much have the ability to do so. But they do seem to be very intimidated, scared, and things of that nature. So anyway, somebody who needs to make major changes to get themselves out of the situation and begin the healing process. Otherwise, they are going to be sitting in a combined karmic soup, so to speak. It's not going to be pretty. But anyways, big changes. And I got to tell you, when they do this, it looks like what is being implied here as well. Something's carried over a few times over the last couple of weeks. Last reading I did in particular, where somebody is desperately trying to get somebody out there in the collective to believe that they have already done all the internal work and so on and so forth. In other words, where they've only made a superficial effort or made the very first if you will, steps, in their internal or shadow work. They're claiming that they've done all the work and they are a completely changed person. And this person may have been somebody that had done some serious damage as far as, your self-respect and your opinion about yourself, perhaps. Maybe they treated you less than, and what they are suffering right now is a direct result of how they treated you, and that's just the way it is. The energy is the energy, and I've seen it for long enough now to not try to candy coat it in any way, shape, or form, or try to make assumptions, or try to make it look less than what it appears to be. So, with that being said, the overall energy for the week until midnight tonight is still that of Iwas, and it's in the upright, and Iwas is a protection and defense room. It's also about rebirth. It talks about the yew tree, which is something that they use for renewal, something that they use for, in some ways, medicinal and shamanic, applications. But it talks about, success, dependability, trustworthiness, enlightenment. It talks about endurance. It talks about the driving force to make, whatever changes or to acquire that which you, desire, basically. Basically having your sights set upon an achievable goal and going for it. And basically it just talks about a dependable person that can be relied upon. Okay? Now that's obviously not the people that I'm talking about here. This is basically the energy of the collective in general, with the warnings that we have been given all week about these people who have been in karmic energy for, in some cases, all of their life. In other cases, well, they just they got on their high horses. They thought they were more than, and they looked down upon you, one of God's chosen. And I really hate to use that terminology, but it is what it is. I'm not going to candy coat things. I try to stay to what I believe the truth actually implies. And that's what the word or the energy is telling me here. So as a result of that, he looks after you. It may take quite a bit of time before these things really manifest. Call it the universal karma or whatever the case may be. But when it does manifest, it is, uh, in direct proportion to the amount of damage that they have utilized against you and others. So it may even be, in some cases, many times greater than what they themselves actually dished out to other people. This is to get them to sit down and reflect and to really start to understand that, things are going to get far, far worse if they do not look at, things in a less delusional fashion. Okay, the world does not revolve around any single person, especially when they're in that karmic or low vibrational energy. So that's what Spirit's doing. It's sitting them down and letting them know, but they're coming back to you without actually completing their necessary inner work. Okay, so be very careful with that. Now, the past energy that we got last Sunday for today was that of Gibo, and Gibo also is in the reverse. Now, Gibo is ordinarily a very positive room, but in the reverse, it talks about the problems or issues that are of a root nature, emotional nature. Somebody is just not accepting the reality of a situation. They're trying to create a false scenario, where they, of course, are not the criminal in this particular endeavor, and maybe they are still using you as the scapegoat, and as a result of that, they're going to continue to get a great deal of this, karmic energy coming their way until they can see things for what it is and not what they wanted or wished it was. So this talks about somebody who's very greedy, right now very lonely as well. They've probably alienated themselves because they're getting a lot of, let's just say they're being singled out even by those they thought were their friends at one time. They have proven, because, like energy, it brings in the same type of energy. So if you're in a low vibration, those are the kinds of people you're typically going to bring into you. Now, it's not the way it always works. It's like moths to a flame sometimes. If you're vibrating very high, sometimes those negative energies, they feel that too, and they are drawn to you, even though they may do everything in their power to, just slander your name and do all manner of evil things against you personally. It will never work, okay? But the people that they have around their inner circle that they hang out with and do all these types of things with, you know what they say, of course, there's no honor among thieves, and exactly is what they're seeing right now, what they're experiencing, and as a result of that, they have chosen to alienate themselves rather than be subjected to the finger pointing, the slander, and everything else that they themselves for so long have mockingly and with a great deal of effort, I might add, gone out and done to people like you out there in the collective. So they're getting, again, a taste of their own medicine, and they're not liking it at all. Okay. So again, and this talks about somebody who's very dependent. Somebody who right now is in a state of privation. Their needs are not being met, and they are themselves either bribing someone else or they themselves are being bribed in some fashion or form. That is part of the energy of this. Now, our present energy is that of a Yara. Now, Yara is also in the reverse in this case. Now, Yara in the reverse, it talks about how things cannot be rushed, okay? Fruition of something cannot be rushed. If you set forth an endeavor of any kind or whatever, you have these expectations, you have these dates and times and everything else that you want them to be accomplished, and there's nothing wrong with that, but this is speaking in terms of, for example, that inner work, perhaps, that they now have come to the realization they have to do. Or maybe they genuinely are the mindset or the heart that it's time to make these changes. They're really feeling it, but they haven't put the efforts in yet. They haven't been tested and tried in that regard yet. So again, proceed cautiously when somebody from the past comes in there and they're telling you that, especially if it's somebody that's actually hurt you in the past, saying that they are a changed person, okay? So this is definitely giving us the heads up that they haven't yet, okay? Although their heart may be, and this will be different for each and every one out there, in the right place, and they're trying to, they have only assumed that making the very first efforts in that is a completion of that endeavor instead of only the beginnings of it. So that's what it's alluding to. So it talks about somebody who's, experiencing reversals and setbacks in their life right now, major changes, in fact, experiencing a great deal of bad timing, again, poverty and conflict, especially in terms of domestic and family type of issues. Now, the obstacles and challenges is that of Berkana, and Berkana is that of the goddess Berchta, who is likened many times like Mother Nature, so to speak. But this too is also in the reverse. So the obstacles and challenges again talks about domestic issues and family issues of every type, and worries and concerns over one's family and inner circle. Anxiety over someone close, somebody who is extremely careless at this time, losing control of their faculties. There is a blurring of consciousness that's taking place right now. They're having a hard time maintaining their own, if you will, sanity. Basically, we're talking about somebody who's extremely deceptive. Almost everything that they say out of their mouth is a lie. They're very good with their words, whoever this is. They're wordsmiths. So somebody who's basically sterile, and that doesn't just necessarily mean sterile in terms of giving birth to a human being. It could be sterile in regards to producing anything of any authentic value whatsoever. And so basically they're in a state of stagnation. All of that is covered under Berchta. That is their obstacle and their challenges right now. Now their help and advice is the only rune that was in the upright in this particular case, and it's a positive one. It's that of Wunyo. Now Wunyo speaks of the wind, and wind typically talks about air, which is intellectual types of endeavors and so on in terms of divination. Talks about harmony, joy, blessings, affection, desire, pleasure, ecstasy, fellowship, prosperity. Talks about glory and spiritual rewards, success, recognition of one's worth. Now, the help and advice, this is something that they could have had. This is something that they could still have if they indeed are sincere about, making the necessary reparations and accepting, their karma, in a more mature fashion, seeing the error of their ways and making things right, to the best of their ability. They're still going to have to pay the price, but that means that karma is stopped as far as building it up. So you're not adding that extra straw on the camel's back, okay, that's already well beyond the buckling at this point. You're starting to remove pieces of straw here and there. So inevitably, at some future point, if you're sincere about this, these things are available still. Okay. Now the future outcome, however, does not look very good. It too is a god. It's Ingwas. Now Ing is also known as Freyr, the twin brother of Freya, the goddess of war and beauty and magic and everything else. The one who taught, the god Odin himself about magic, a specific type of magic. But what it means in the reverse is that of impotence. Somebody who's scattered, who just cannot focus. They're all over the place, kind of a thing. Somebody who's extremely self-absorbed. Basically, they make moves, or the illusion of making moves, but it leads to nothing or nowhere. They have a disassociation at this time with things around them, their environment, and so on. They're, again, being very stagnant. So stagnant is a big, part of this energy. So somebody who is not doing much of anything at this point as far as effort goes, somebody who's extremely bottled up, somebody who's in very seductive energy. That's one of the things that they've utilized to get ahead or to get the things that they wanted in life. Maybe they're very good looking, whatever the case may be, but all those things are covered here. And again, fooling you, the collective, into believing that they've actually completed something instead of it only being the initial stages of that something. In other words, their inner work. So basically meaningless motion. Okay. They may make you all the promises in the world, but again, be very, very cautious. Use your intuition, and let their actions dictate what it is that's really going on inside. They can only keep up the facade for so long if they're not being authentic, if they're not being genuine. If they indeed are disingenuine, then that mask will come off very, very quickly, okay? Especially with all the pressure they're already currently under. So that's pretty much the read for today. I know it's not a positive one, and I apologize for that. I sometimes lament over the fact that I get so many of these less than positive readings, but I'm not afraid to put them out there because somebody out there has to hear it. Somebody out there needs this, even if it only gives them a small amount of insight into some of the things that are happening to them or will happen to them in the very near future. Then it's a blessing of sorts. And that's the mindset and the heart set, basically, that I have doing this. I get nothing out of this. I have to invest my time and effort, and I'm not getting paid for any of this. Like I've made mention many, many times, I'm doing this, to give back to the collective, okay? So I hope this was helpful to somebody out there. And meanwhile, you guys stay victorious. And, we're getting close to that finish line, so don't give up. I know it's hard. Believe me, I know it's hard. Don't give up. And I'll see you again very, very soon. I'm going to do another reading here for today's energy specifically, okay? Take care. God bless.